the speech from the 46th President of the United States delivered yesterday, the first presidential address in 51 days given on the anniversary of the declaration of the global pandemic that is the China virus. Very graciously, the President allowed us, permitted us, maybe in small groups, to hold July 4th celebrations. Here he is giving us his gracious permission.
If we do all this, if we do our part, if we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout and a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day.
I'm sure the residents of Texas and other free states like Florida laughed when they heard that line. Perhaps we have a president living in an alternate universe, one in which the genesis of the 3 vaccines that are being delivered across the nation today is unsure, or perhaps the genesis of them cannot be mentioned because they have to do with my old boss, Donald J. Trump. This, again, is Joe Biden on the miracle of those vaccines.
The development, manufacture, and distribution of vaccines in record time is a true miracle of science. It's one of the most extraordinary achievements any country has ever accomplished.
An extraordinary achievement indeed. But why did it happen? 3 vaccines in less than a calendar year? Because of the prior incumbent. It has nothing to do with you, Joe. He's still lying to Americans 51 days in. Last and most shocking of all for me, as a child of the Cold War, a child of those who escaped a communist dictatorship on the wrong side of the Iron Curtain, was his line about what Washington, D.C. is and how you're not supposed to look at it as some foreign capital in a foreign land. Play cut.
We need to remember the government isn't some foreign force in a distant capital. No, it's us, all of us. We, the people. For you and I, that America thrives when we give our hearts, when we turn our hands to common purpose.
Really? I live in Washington, D.C., and there's a 3-mile-long, 12-foot-high, razor-wire-tipped fence separating American citizens from the quote-unquote elite. Let's go to somebody who I'm sure has something to say. He is one of the most astute and courageous commentators in America today, senior fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution, the author of the superb book, The Case for Trump, Professor Victor Davis Hanson. Welcome to STINCHFIELD.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Professor, first things first, if I can work in reverse order, your reaction to this plea from the president not to look at Washington, D.C. as some foreign capital of a foreign nation?
Well, it would be good, sound advice any other time but during his first few days in office, because what he's done, he's taken the capital, the iconic center of a peaceful America and a democratic, transparent society, and he's militarized and weaponized it. There haven't been as many federal troops. There hasn't been as much barbed wire or fencing since Jubal Early in July of 1864 tried to attack Washington at the head of a Confederate army. And yet, why did he do that, Sebastian? Was it because it was an armed insurrection threatened? No one who was arrested in that unfortunate assault on the Capitol had any firearm. Was it because of a police officer was murdered, as we were told? Not, we don't think he was. The evidence doesn't support that. Was there a grand design for a coup? Were there insurrectionists in hiding? Are they infiltrated into the military? No, there's no evidence at all. So why do we have this Capitol militarized? It's because it's sending a message that there's a constant, nonstop threat from so-called alt-right white supremacists, and that just justifies extraordinary vigilance means and empowers the left. I can't think of any other excuse for it.
And weren't we promised from that stage in front of the Capitol on January the 20th, Professor, that this would be the man who would bring us unity and peace? Would it not have been a gesture of goodwill yesterday in his 23-minute speech to actually recognize how we have the vaccines, that 100 million doses of which have already been delivered? Would that not have been a first step to that putative unity?
It sure would have been a way of bringing 74 million voters back into the fold. It was especially egregious, Sebastian, because Donald Trump took a great risk. He didn't just put all of his eggs in one basket. He was criticized for Moderna and the Novavax and Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson. They said he was spreading himself too thin. The science was unproven. The RNA may be dangerous, that vaccination. There was no way it would happen within a year. You couldn't lift immunity from prosecution or endangerment if there was something went wrong in the civil sense with the vaccination. And what did he do? He pressed ahead, and now we're leading the world in vaccinations due to his risk. And so, whatever Joe Biden thinks of Donald Trump, it was very small of him, and I think insidiously unnecessary and mean-spirited not to give him credit for where we are now. Remember, he said, and I don't know if that was just a mental lapse, that there were no vaccinations given when he entered office, even though he was on TV on December 21st being vaccinated, and even though Kamala Harris said that she would not ever get a vaccination that had been endorsed by Donald Trump, and she was one of the first cohorts at the front of the line to be vaccinated. So there's so much duplicity and dishonesty. It's really depressing from somebody who says he's a unifier.
But it's more than just one man, is it not? And it's more than just Biden or his speechwriters. How disturbed are you because of the language that is being used of late, not just from the mainstream media, where you see the likes of Jake Tapper on CNN talking of MAGA terrorism or Trump terrorism, but when you have members of this administration, you have the incoming Secretary of Defense, a retired general who, during his Senate hearing, actually use the word enemies, Professor, to describe members of the U.S. military. In my book, an enemy is somebody you kill, you destroy, you blew up, and this is now the commander of our forces as the Secretary of Defense. How concerned are you if this language is being normalized?
I'm very concerned. And I saw that John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, referred to Fox News' Tucker Carlson in the same breath as the communist Chinese. He said, we don't listen to the Fox News hosts and we don't listen to the Chinese communists. I can't think of any time when a Pentagon spokesman would stoop that low. So what are we watching? We're watching the militarization and the weaponization of the Pentagon. And why are we doing that? Because when you get up to colonel and above in our military now, you become acculturated to the Beltway and the Pentagon itself in Washington. And they discover, or they sense, that the left now has changed their attitude about the military. They feel that that's a mechanism to green light everything from subsidized transgendered surgeries to women on frontline combat without the red tape of the bureaucracy or the conundrum of Congress. And so now a woke military in the mind of the left is a very valuable thing. And when you suggest that you're distorting the mission of creating deterrence and maintaining deterrence and winning wars, and you're substituting that with a social awareness agenda, they get very angry. And all we can say about them, they know how to get promoted and what enhances or detracts from their career, and they make the necessary adjustments. So now they're hunting non-existent alt-right, white supremacist insurrectionists within the military. And they've got more troops in Washington than they do in Afghanistan. And they're very sensitive to criticism. And the most sensitive era is that they combine this wokeness with a swamp idea of enrichment. So many of our secretaries of defense have, before they went into that secretaryship, along with their top team, were serving as on billets or boards of defense contractors, and they will serve again when they revolve out. So it's a very strange combination of trying to enhance your income through the capitalist system, but then at the same time be on the barricades of social awareness and wokeness.
Would it be an exaggeration, would it be hyperbole to call this concerted effort an attempt to criminalize conservatism?
Yeah, I think so. I think we all have reached a point now that cancel culture is not the right word because that implies symmetry. This is a one-sided weaponization or maybe a Sovietization of discourse in which the left says we're going to go after people who are traditionalists or conservatives. One word, Sebastian, one wrong phrase, one wrong look, and you can lose your career or your livelihood. That's not symmetrical. The left says, you know what? We're cosmically moral. We're for abortion. We're for open borders. We're for climate change legislation. And therefore, we get an exemption from our personal lives. We love humanity in the abstract, but maybe not so much in the concrete. And no better example of that is Andrew Cuomo. He understands that without deterrence and without worry about repercussion because he's cosmically moral, then he can serially abuse his aides and associates in a fashion it's quite repugnant and would get anybody else fired long ago. And the only reason he's being called to account because now he's an embarrassment. Maybe once, twice, three times he gets exemption, but finally he abuses that left-wing woke insurance.
We will be discussing the fate of Governor Cuomo later in this show. In the meantime, he is the author of The Case for Trump, the Hoover Institution's senior fellow, Professor Victor Davis Hanson. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.